So this past week, I participated in the Argonne National Labs and NREL wind turbine drivetrain reliability collaborative workshop here. And it was quite eye-opening. And people have asked me before, and what we're going to talk about today is going to be specific to AI and ML applied for predictive maintenance and reliability. So what was particularly interesting, and a question I've received before has been, why do I attend conferences like this versus some of the other commercial conferences? There was one happening at the same time that week, and because I'm involved in this type of thing, because we're involved in machine learning and AI and applications of digitalization of facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I have a choice. I can go and get with the folks that are setting the standards, are doing the research. Like in this case, we had the National Labs, we had other areas within Department of Energy, we had OEMs, we had the data scientists, we had the programmers for the technology, the leaders for that from all over the world. There were over 250 people there, as I seem to recall. They said originally it was under 200, and it grew. So over 3 days. So what we ended up doing is the first day we covered lubrication technologies and some specific things like particle counters and things like that. What we also did there, and the reason we were invited, had to do with the work we were doing on modeling different issues and verifying with real-life data, such as the circulating currents up tower, which are taking out main bearings. Nobody had ever modeled that before with real data versus MATLAB and other simulation software. We did sponsor the event because, why not? I mean, that's part of what we do, is support this stuff. As a matter of fact, a lot of the work that MotorDock AI, which is self-funded, MotorDock AI and our partners do, is we end up supplying some of our scrubbed data back to programs, to the universities and everybody else involved in this, in order to kind of assist in moving forward. As a matter of fact, we've been attributed with solving a number of issues in this industry as well as some others. So, long story short, we had an opportunity to go there, and the insight was very interesting because when I read the articles, when I watch the presentations in industry, I'm given the impression that, we're classifying faults, meaning we're identifying defects in the system and we're doing all this stuff. When I go to something like this, I learn very rapidly that is in the extremely early stages. As a matter of fact, some of the work we did early on with pharmaceuticals was so far advanced that most companies and most universities have not hit that point yet. A lot of the discussion here was how to use SCADA and pi-like data to analyze conditions, and we've done that. So that was part of what was interesting. Also, what was interesting was, I've said it on the other podcasts I've been involved in. Really, there's an accuracy issue with machine learning and AI. There's scoring systems that tell you the accuracy based upon known data input and all kinds of other things. But we've learned, especially with more and more people using some of these LLMs, or large language models, and remember that term, large language models, which does not equate to reliability analysis and other AI stuff. So what we're going to cover today is some of what we picked up there, but more so, we're going to discuss some of the actual work being done, some of the peer-reviewed stuff, and the fact that people often will ask the questions, will get answers, but those answers don't often meet, including the fact that before I started this today, I had sat down and I had interviewed ChatGPT again. As a matter of fact, the research plugin for ChatGPT, and the results were interesting. So we're going to cover that as well. So this may not be completed in the first one, and I want you to understand, I am not taking a negative stance on this. As a matter of fact, part of our solution does involve anomaly detection, which is what everybody does because it's really easy. That means identifying a modeled system. This is the physics-based systems, right? And looking for a variation over time, and then determining if that variation means something. Okay, so if we say we're classifying, that means that when we see some difference, that we identify exactly what that difference is, like lack of lubrication in a vibration in a bearing, or misalignment in the system, unbalance, degrading bearing due to shaft currents. Guess what AI and ML is not doing right now with the data that's coming in? We're not doing that. It's too difficult. So nobody really spends the time. Instead, we end up with anomaly detection, which in my view is just a dummy light. Basically, oh, you've got low oil. I mean, that's basically what's happening. You're driving down the street, dummy light comes on, check engine light comes on. That is anomaly detection. That light coming on doesn't tell you that, oh, you forgot to change the oil. Oh, or more likely, that some environmental device stopped operating. So there's certain things we're going to cover that I feel it's important if you're going through digital transformation that you understand what the limits are so that you don't go forward and expend funds that are unnecessary. We've watched programs get cut, active programs like, reliability programs and things like that get cut funding because they've overextended in order to try to do machine learning and AI or IIoT systems that were completely unnecessary. They got in so much information that the program basically drowned. They didn't understand what they actually needed. They didn't start small and build. They went out and said, hey, vendor, what do we need? Or, hey, consultant, what do we need? And as a matter of fact, some of the studies are very telling when it comes to that. So really, we'll talk about what made successful programs, really, not from what you've read in the articles, not from what you've read in the other stuff, although we will be looking at some of those, some actual study articles, meaning peer-reviewed stuff, not written by, you know what I mean. So anyways, when I started today, I said, okay, ChatGPT, what happens if I go out and I trust an IIoT system using artificial intelligence and machine learning to do anomaly detection in a plant with Sasquatch, of course, right? The hidden, the elusive reliability engineer, the one who knows what's going on, right? What if I go in and I rely solely on that and not the human input? And I allow those biases, just an aside, I allow the biases of the software designer or the machine learning specialist or the data engineer to be in charge. Now, I didn't put that part in words. I just put the first part down. What happens if I have an IIoT system in place solely based upon the software and learning of the system for anomaly detection? What happens in my plant? This is the image that ChatGPT decided was optimal for what was going on, including the chaos of people attempting to chase after all the failing equipment, because all you're doing is early detection of faults. Worse, by not classifying those conditions, you are not determining if there's something correctable early on that will mitigate that issue altogether, let alone having the information necessary to ensure that that problem doesn't keep reoccurring. AI doesn't do that, plain and simple, unless you use it for certain other ways. Now, again, Motor.ai, we use machine learning and AI, and I'm going to talk about how we use it to make it a cost-effective approach with a significant return on investment. Just as a teaser, I'll say there's software that we've developed for some new tools that would have taken months that we did in a few weekends by utilizing the power of the large learning models to go out and help us format the scripting. Now, we don't trust that the actual software that machine learning develops, because as we learned, today is Saturday, so I might have 80 to 90% accuracy today in ChatGPT. Tomorrow I'll come in to work on something and I'll get 10%. And we watch it occur all the time as the system decides that it's not going to answer you. As a matter of fact, I ran into that while I was putting this together today. That's why I'm not walking us through as we do it. I did in order to show you what we run using it. And we had crashes, we had problems, variations, we had ChatGPT running into problems, everything that occurs. And it's not limited in the news. Someone made some wildly interesting problems, mainly based upon the biases of those doing the development. How you train that model. The software has a lot of things that they do as part of the guardrails. That means whatever my LLM, when I go on there, and that the locations, the big tech guys, about how to monetize this stuff, right? So I went out and I looked for commercial information, meaning a white paper or peer-reviewed paper on something specific to electrical signature analysis. I don't pay Google for advertising. Guess what showed up? Everybody except me, them. All of them were commercial. It went to their websites and took marketing, which half of it was dead wrong, and presented it as fact versus a researched, peer-reviewed set of data, which was specifically my question, my request. So we run to that more and more frequently, and it will decide what you can and cannot see, and only the people that are paying them a king's ransom are going to be seen. So these are the things you have to remember. And a question did come up, by the way, last week, and I held my tongue a little bit, but somebody said, well, how are people using LLMs to determine the condition of equipment? No. That's not what it does. Now, it will go out and will find stuff. As a matter of fact, that's what we're going to show next. So, get out of this, and I'm going to go to the discussion and for my friend at, and it looks like, there we go. You can see I was asking questions and I wasn't getting what I wanted, so I went ahead next. By the way, the feeling I'm getting based upon everything going on in this moment, I did some repairs on the computer, and basically I'm under the impression that I am going to be lagging. So I'm going to pause real quick. Okay, let's see how we do here. So in this interview with ChatGPT, I went back and I wanted to know stuff. And I said, what is the published accuracy of AI and ML in industrial environments through the exclusive use of IIoT, excluding human inputs on equipment condition? Reference only peer-reviewed paper. Now, you notice up here, this is a specific application that I've used, which is Ask Your PDF Research Assistant. I've got a couple of these apps that I use in the background. So it ran into some problems before it responded. It says it seems there's an issue because it was getting conflicting responses, basically. I ran this through a couple of times. Okay, so what I found interesting, and these are all relatively recent papers. I mean, 2018 was the oldest, but most of them are post 2020, because that's when things took off. A lot of people had a lot of free time on their hands. The end result was, how do I make a business so I don't have to go somewhere and be around people, or at a job somewhere? How can I stay at home? Well, a lot of people design stuff so they don't have to do that, I guess, because that's what a lot of it came up with. So, experimental application of popular machine learning algorithms on predictive maintenance and the design of IoT. So what it does is it then allows me to go in and identify those specific papers. Now, what apparently is happening to me now is a problem I've been having so far. I've upgraded the computer, I've upgraded the stuff and everything else, but apparently a combination of things on my system is just causing one hell of a lag. So we're not going to wait for that to download. I'll just summarize it. So basically, a lot of these papers, and here's, by the way, something really, really important. Always remember, they even put it down here, ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. So what I do whenever I see this stuff, I will very specifically go in order to verify that the paper even exists. I mean, you have to be careful. Like, you can't see it because I have it just above here. This particular paper that's about to pop up is an IEEE Explore paper. Okay? Now, we should just get the abstract once it decides it's time to show that. So let's go back here while it's doing its thing. And then so on as we go through, we're looking at all of these papers on this. I said, these papers cover a range of topics, which is what it said. And I said, is there a general accuracy for IIoT and AI/ML? Basically, I want to know how accurate it is without human interaction, published as a range or statistic. And are there published benchmarks or standards for minimum accuracy, and how is the accuracy scored? Sorry about that. Swallowed my coffee the wrong way. While searching for benchmarks or standards for minimum accuracy and how accuracy is scored, several papers, and then it died. So I said, are there articles identifying the negative impacts of full reliance on IIoT without human interaction? You know what? Let's do something. Oh no! If I run it back here, it's going to it'll mess up this. Are there articles identifying negative impacts? Okay, so here we go. The reliance on industrial IIoT without human interaction and verification poses several concerns. As highlighted by the research found, these studies discuss a range of negative impacts and challenges, including security vulnerabilities. That was identified as number one, without actually doing any interaction. The problem with cybersecurity was significant. Okay, so the dark side of Industry 4.0 and how can technology be more sustainable. That one discusses sustainability challenges, security of IT, OT convergence. This was in 2023. Identifying and anticipating cyber attacks that could cause physical damage to industrial control systems. This is something we were talking about at NIST in 2015. Okay, and I spoke specifically about it in 2016 at NIST, in which there was a discussion about taking over somebody's vehicle. Okay, I've already had the experience of a modification being made at a company, either a mistake or elsewise, that resulted in an alert that my tires were all flat at midnight when I was traveling, which would have indicated the possibility that the tires were removed from my truck. Well, as it turns out, that didn't happen. But through that type of system, I had said through the radios of vehicles, when you're using a lot of these things, because now for instance, my truck has got a Type 3 radio, which means all of the firmware upgrades for the entire truck, the entire vehicle, are downloaded via satellite periodically. And it's really annoying. I'll be driving along and all of a sudden my dash, luckily the dial part doesn't because that's digital as well, but my radio goes silent and other things occur, and my map stops working and all kinds of other stuff until I stop, and then it says upgrade about to occur, do not start your vehicle, and I'll be at a gas pump, and when you shut your door, it will lock you out for the next hour. And I'm stuck for the next hour wandering around waiting to be able to get back into my vehicle. There's that kind of thing. But on the flip side, there's the ability, if somebody hacks that system, which any system that is customer facing, that has any interface whatsoever, is not a fully air gap system, can be hacked and will be hacked at some point in time. We know that for a fact. As a matter of fact, at NIST, what we talked about was not if a cyber attack will occur and be successful, but when. And the mantra for the cybersecurity professionals is we have to get it right every time. They only have to get it right once. So we come in here and we take a look at this. Let's go ahead and we'll start that one opening too and see what happens. And yeah, it looks like just delay. So if I pause, these will pop up. Okay, so sorry about that, and I'm sure we're out of sync already. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I am using the AI version of Camtasia, so who knows? In any case, let's start going through this bit that I was looking up. And the first one was AI decision support prognostics for IoT health monitoring, failure prediction, and time to failure. Now, I'm not logged in, but this is IEEE Explore. It is a theoretical methodology published in 2019, and of particular interest is that in order to get conditions where you're identifying problems, not classifying anything, just identifying anomalies. I just went through the paper. Allow false alarms. So basically allow false positives on everything. Also understand that a lot of these components are going to have interesting problems. Now, there was something referenced in here that prompted me to look a little further into a few other things. Now, the other paper that I had just mentioned, for everybody, it was just a minute or two ago. For me, it was, 45 minutes ago. In any case, identifying the anticipated cyber attacks that could cause physical damage to industrial control systems from MIT. This is one of the issues. This is the dark side of machine learning and AI and utilizing the cloud and IIoT systems, especially when those systems connect directly back into your systems. And these are things that you have to understand are probabilities. Okay, so this paper here is an IEEE paper, of course. Again, I asked it for peer-reviewed papers. So physical control systems are increasingly controlled by reconfigurable network-enabled devices to increase flexibility and ease for commissioning and maintenance. Such capability creates vulnerabilities. Devices can be remotely reprogrammed by a malicious actor to act in unintended ways, causing physical damage to mechanical systems, infrastructure, and life and limb. Literally happened in 2016, where an intrusion through a motor control center caused some issues where people working on electrical systems suddenly discovered their tagouts were not tagged out. In this paper, past examples of actual damage to cyber-physical systems are shown, including threats posed by software-controlled VFDs, are analyzed in a small-scale version of an attack on a VFD. So we're talking about motor-driven equipment having some type of vulnerability. Okay, these were demonstrated as far back as 2007. So this basically means that, and here it is. So this made it onto YouTube. There is a YouTube thing. This was the Aurora test. And what happened in the Aurora test is they simulated a cyber attack in which somebody broke into the system, meaning that it was a pen test, meaning somebody not familiar with the system was able to break into the system and cause this generator to basically run out of control. In the video, you see it trying to disintegrate while it's running. So there were some other things, including SCADA systems and other issues. There was even the one where nobody's quite sure, I think. I don't know. I stopped following it. But that somebody had done some damage to some nuclear equipment in Iran. So, this is basically an interesting study. So, as you can see, rather long, but, when we talk about this stuff, it's never short. And all these are examples when I reviewed the paper. Not theoretical, not all experimental, some very real. Okay, so there's that dark side. So as we start looking at digital transformation, these are the things we have to consider. When we're investing in one part, we have to make sure that we're investigating the other part. What I often see, and the common failure, is when people will rush in and they will try to do everything at once. They'll be overwhelmed with data. They'll put in sensors they don't need. They'll put in other equipment they don't need. They won't balance human interfaces like, going around doing rounds, things like that. They will just throw it all into digital transformation because that's what they're being told to do by magazines. I'm sorry, CEO. I question when a board relies more on, and my favorite is, it's the science. But then they pull out a marketing article. And maybe it's marketing science? Kind of like political science. Is that really a science? Well, anyways. So as we go through, understanding the actual needs. I mean, going through and doing stuff. What I've seen the results of a lot of times is either you get free consulting by bringing in the vendor. Like, I'm a vendor. Bring me in anytime. I mean, I'd like to think that we are looking at things a little more objectively than most because we've got really good sales. But you got a lot of companies out there that are, we're self-invested. We don't have investors, so I don't have to make an investor happy. I've got low overheads. I've got partnerships. We don't care. Well, we do. We care about our customers and clients. Our reputation is that, when we implement something, it works. But we've run into people that bring in investor-based things. They have to get a sale. They have to do this. They have to get the big numbers in order to show that their concept they designed on a kitchen table off of a textbook is applicable. Here, have some free stuff. And then if it works, then we'll implement it everywhere. And then when it doesn't work, they blame you for not implementing it correctly. And then they say, we're going to do the free consulting, and you need to put our stuff on all this stuff over here. And your reliability folks are saying, and I literally walked into a situation like this. I was invited in when I was the chair of SMRP to have a talk with a board by the reliability engineers because they said, they brought in a company. They had a screw, and we needed a nail for our hammer, and everybody was walking around with a hammer trying to put in screws, and they said, "This is the equipment you need to put you need to test, you need to evaluate. Don't worry about this stuff over here." Well, this stuff over here was where they were seeing the failures, where they needed to get the information and everything else. Why did they go over there? Because that company's technology couldn't do the stuff that they needed done, but it could do all this other unnecessary stuff. Okay, we see it all the time. Oh, let's put a device in order to get the cost of the overall implementation down. Let's put stuff on this quarter horsepower motor that feeds a little bathroom fan. Now, unless that fan is for the president of NBC, that's a real story. I'll tell it another time. But, it's really not critical to the operation of the company. Well, it depends. Well, neither here nor there. Now, if I'm looking at that same quarter horsepower fan as part of a pharmaceutical system where I'm caring about the environment and that everything's running a certain way, then that's critical. And putting that equipment on it then makes economic sense, which leads us into more discussion. So I said, are there articles on the impacts of shifting and or comparing traditional route-based predictive maintenance and condition monitoring versus IoT, AI, and ML, including computational and cloud system impacts? Translated to English, cloud-based systems do not mean, and I jokingly took a picture of clouds on a flight, and I put it up there, and I said, "I found the cloud." In reality, the question was, what is the cloud? Well, the cloud's somebody else's computer, probably a data center, where this computer right here, even though it's really annoying and it's causing this lag, because I know that lag's happening again, but this computer right here is doing 0.00004 kilowatt hours per gigabyte of storage, and the most I see out of it when it's operating is about, like right now it's pulling maximum. I'm looking at a meter right now, and I'm running 12 watts. Now I put the same thing, and I do exactly what we're doing now, and I put it on a cloud-based system, and I will measure that in kilowatts. So the dramatic difference is thousands, hundreds of thousands, and depending on the size of what you're doing, millions times the computational power necessary, which translates from this little PC, which has a little fan in it that's running right now, I'm sure you can hear it, versus a large data center where I have cooling systems and everything else. When I go in those buildings, there's a floor where the servers are. It's a small floor. Could be, for a massive data center, I could have a few thousand square feet of actual data center. But I'll have 30, 40, 50, 60,000 square feet of chillers and fans and pumps and all the other things that are necessary to keep those systems cool, so that they can do all the work that we need done. So when we start looking into this stuff, we say, okay, what is my cost? Because cloud isn't free. What is my cost? Trust me, I know we have cloud-based systems. But what we do is we minimize the amount of information going up to them, and we try to keep everything on the edge, and that's where the edge came in, right? The idea that you keep it all down on industrial PCs as close to the system as possible and transmit up the minimum system amount of data necessary. But when I start looking at the overall impact, I might have shifted my energy costs and my emissions from my building to a remote area. But when I did that, I also increased my global footprint, my greenhouse gas footprint, my energy footprint by multiple orders of magnitude. So where I might have had a server with 10, 20, 30 terabytes locally, I put those terabytes up in the cloud, and I'm using large learning model or large language models, and I'm using other AI systems to churn and burn data that I will never use, that is not providing me anything useful back. And that is having a negative impact. People don't realize right now, data centers, including Bitcoin mining, or whatever you want to call it, those are 5% roughly of all energy generated, all electrical energy generated globally, and looking to exceed 7% by 2030. And even in the area, because we do make visits to data centers for special projects, for harmonic mitigation, for energy studies, things like that, either us or our partners. And they're growing like mad. And we're not talking about, 2 or 3 megawatt plant. No, when they're building these things, we're talking about 100, 200, 300 megawatts. We're talking about the energy consumption of a steel plant, like a large steel plant, or a number of large steel plants going into one facility with so much data, and it's not enough because they're already starting to plan and build the next data center over, and they look for the areas where they can get the cheapest energy, which drives up the cost of energy for the local populace. We've seen that in a few areas too. So the actual social and environmental impact, let alone the costs involved, are significant. So it comes down to, again, thinking through what you actually need. And we're going to cover more of that. So I said, okay, what is the environmental impact of IoT, et cetera? And ChatGPT was very careful not to respond. It can significantly improve energy efficiency by optimizing maintenance schedules and reducing unnecessary inspections and repairs. These technologies can predict equipment failures before they occur. Predict equipment failures, the dummy light, before they occur, allowing for timely interventions that prevent costly downtime and reduce the energy. Basically, hopefully not have the plant go down, right? That would be a little better than a pure reactive program, but does go back to that picture I showed. Traditional approaches often rely on scheduled maintenance regardless of actual equipment condition. This is where we get into the bit where ChatGPT hallucinates. What's the purpose of doing route-based maintenance? Well, according to this, and according to all of these MLAI experts, you don't need to know what's happening to your system. You just need to know that this component may fail because there's an anomaly. Oh, and by the way, this is a common response. This is great. Can I see the data? You don't own the data. We own the data. We'll tell you what we see. If you set up to get involved in one of these programs or systems, you really need to make sure that you have ownership of that data. A majority of the times, you do not. You do not. And I first ran into that in the military as a consultant, and this is early 2000s. Matter of fact, I won't specify which one. Wasn't military. Not technically military, but they float. So we'll forgive them. Navy, right? Well, and they rescue people on occasion, so we'll be good. In any case, they made some decisions on moving from a third-party predictive maintenance group to another, and discovered very quickly they didn't own their predictive maintenance data. That's right. When I'm running into this stuff elsewhere, a lot of these cloud-based systems, they don't want you to know how they're doing what they're doing, or if they're actually doing what they say they're doing. You don't get the info, right? In some cases, I've seen people have to purchase it after the fact. I've seen other things going on, but that's also why some of those will rent you the equipment, or require that they're the only ones that can interpret the data. And again, MotorDoc, the systems we utilize, that's absolutely opposite of the way we see it. We try to keep it open, and customers own their own data. And I mean, 9 out of 10 times that I'm talking to somebody, they are absolutely in disbelief that the customer owns their own data where we're concerned. I just don't comprehend it. I don't comprehend how businesses can do that. I have a concern with the ethics behind that. If a customer needs the information, they need the information, right? So traditional approaches, getting back to this bit here, you've got IoT, AI, and ML-based systems being more efficient by remote analysis. The other thing we've discovered more of is the costs associated with implementing these systems have no return on investment, often. Or the return on investment is so far out there. The cost associated with testing equipment is ridiculously far out there in some cases, where somebody doing route-based maintenance, you're not taking up that data stream. You're not utilizing your pipelines to get data, whether that's a cell pipeline or something else to get data somewhere. When we set up a continuous monitoring system, what we tend to do is I like to use an isolated Wi-Fi, or more likely a cell modem system, so that our system monitoring equipment is 100% isolated. We have some companies out there that are making ESA devices, and they actually have a connection to your equipment so that if something goes awry, they can trip your equipment. Why would you do that? A majority of the time, and this again was reinforced the past week, a majority of the time it's an anomaly detection and there's nothing wrong. I mean, if I have a trained-based physical model system that has taken 3 months, 6 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is, to train it, and now it's running, and it's an electrical-based system, and I add something to my electrical system, I have changed the impedance of my network, what do you think just happened to your training? How many anomalies do you think are going to happen? Oh, by the way, somebody switches on a light bulb that they hadn't switched on before, or operates the equipment in some other way. And the response, by the way, is, well, you're not supposed to change how your equipment operates. That causes problems for our detection. Well, where does that allow flexibility in operations? Isn't that part of what it's supposed to do, is allow you to get information so you can determine how best to operate your equipment? What corrections need to be made to make optimal use of your equipment? For instance, we detect harmonic issues. The harmonic issues are high. We detect power factor issues, and you've got poor power factor, and you've got all these conditions that are limiting the operation of your equipment, so that when you try to operate at a suitable level that matches what your equipment can do, you trip. Well, what if through this you say, okay, if we make these corrections, we can increase our throughput by such and such a percentage based upon the information we're getting back from our IoT devices. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Matter of fact, that's the data science side of IoT and SCADA-based systems. So we come back here, this is inaccurate. Only if you're using the data from the perspective of a data science approach to look at optimizing the stuff, and you need inside teams that know your equipment. You don't outsource that. This was picked up by McKinsey right away. When we're talking about the really, really low percentages of successful implementations. And I'm talking about really low, like 3-4%. And that's 2024 data, meaning 3 months of this year already. And programs are not even coming close to what they're supposed to. So traditional approaches often, are far better. I mean, my personal approach is to use anomaly detection to help with identifying false positives so that triggers us to verify through the data that something small hasn't occurred that's missed our expert systems, because we use expert systems. I don't want to rely on anomaly detection. We need the actual condition, because how can you predict remaining useful life, that's something I'm going to discuss in another podcast. Because time to failure estimation versus remaining useful life, two completely different approaches. One is, when you see this condition, it might last this long. Well, what's the chance that it's going to survive? Well, we don't know for sure, but we'll throw you a number. Versus time to failure estimation, which we're watching every single measurement to see what changes, how the angle changes in order to improve the accuracy, whether it increases or decreases on every data set. I don't know which one's going to be more accurate. But in order to do that, you have to understand the defect. That means it has to be classified. Really easy to do in an expert system. Apparently not so much. And we know this because we do it. As a matter of fact, our claim to fame was, I couldn't believe I was the first one to actually do it. But according to all the publications, I was the first one to do it. And that was a hybrid AI expert system, meaning a machine learning / expert system, where we ran them in parallel so that we could get classification and expert analysis in software, coupled with anomaly detection in order to increase the chance of detection. And it caused horrible problems with our machine learning scoring, but it worked. Environmental impact of cloud and data centers. Data centers powering AI and ML have a significant environmental footprint. Not just significant, massive. It says something about fossil fuels, etc. Most of them are signing agreements with alternative energy. However, apparently, if I were to take a look at the alternative energy actually available over time and everything else, there's more sustainable energy or clean energy or alternative energy, however you want to identify it, committed to data centers alone than exists. But can't allow logic to get in the way of math, right? Or accounting. The net environmental impact using these must be considered as part, when you're looking at emission savings from improved operational efficiency and so on and so on and so on. So basically, if you look at it correctly, and by the way, what I'm saying, and we'll talk about those points at the end, when I'm taking a look at this, I can look at it and say, you know what? If I do this right, I can not only make the financial improvements, and reduce the amount of digital transformation that I have to deal with at any given time. It's always easy to add. It's really difficult to subtract. So I can start small and say, you know what? If only we had this information, boom. If only we had this information, boom. Instead of going, I need all of this information. Oh, maybe I don't. Oh, my costs are massive now. I've got no return on investment whatsoever. No IRR, no anything. And I've now expensed my company almost out of business. So comparative use of this stuff and everything else. So basically, because I'm asking an AI, it's saying AI is the way to go. So I said, you know what? A lot of these systems rely upon wireless. So what is the impact of battery waste? Again, it was very careful to avoid any direct measurements, but we do know that there's been a massive increase in landfill waste directly due to batteries. Because when you got these little batteries, even the rechargeable ones, after they wear out for a little while, they go into the round file, right? So they go out to my landfill. They don't get repurposed. They don't get rebuilt. There's people looking into how to recycle them. I mean, they're not recycled yet. And they go through the resources like lithium. Okay, you know what's about to happen to lithium grease and lithium this and lithium that? Lithium is a major component in batteries, right? So in addition to suddenly finding out you've got a new maintenance practice, which is replacing batteries in your IoT devices that were used, and you purchased all this stuff in order to eliminate your staff, right? Because Elihu Goldratt, my hero, who helped create the situation we had in significant restraints in trade recently, and everything else, basically made the statement in his book: if you tell me that you've reduced your costs, show me how many heads you've removed. I'm sorry, I'm pro-employee. So in reality, the idea is supposed to have been, reallocating those resources, human resources, because we need them. But let us not forget, according to some university professors, our maintenance equipment, our operating equipment now heals itself, so we don't need maintenance staff. That's not a joke. I literally sat in an audience in 2017 or 18 when I think we were down in Indianapolis, I want to say, for SMRP, and we had some student stand up in the back of the room and said, I don't understand why you're worried about workforce. Maintenance people aren't needed anymore because all equipment is self-healing. And then he ran out of the room, so we could only assume that somebody was telling him, incorrectly, of course, that equipment fixes itself. Even robots don't do that yet. So, mitigation strategies, adoption of rechargeable batteries, improvement in battery technology, enhancing recycling programs, energy harvesting technologies. So, I'm doing a study right now on looking at what the energy impact is of vibration. And one of the things I had to do is review a whole bunch of research on energy harvesting. And basically, let's just say for vibration equipment, so I mount my vibration transducer on the motor, and if that motor is running nice and smooth, it's got nothing to harvest. So I must misalign or unbalance my machine in order to generate the power, to generate the energy, to give me data to tell me that I'm misaligned or unbalanced. It's not a joke. There's several of the papers specifically outlined that you had to deliberately cause problems in your equipment in order to energy harvest. In the meantime, the rest of is it a possibility that this is something you can utilize? Absolutely. Are there ways of pulling power off the machine? Oh yeah, some of the brakes we use right now. You have the little devices that you put in the connection box of the motor, and it puts out DC power to operate a brake. It could be used for the other stuff. There's a lot of solutions to everything I'm talking about. Again, yes, I'm taking things from a negative standpoint. I'm a reliability engineer. So I always tell my wife, she goes, why are you always so negative? Well, it's my job. I have to find the problems in order to solve them. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, when I'm reading articles or I'm listening to a speaker and this has happened a lot the past several years. I'm hearing them speak as if this is already solved. None of this has been solved. This was again reinforced at the lab this week when we were there, and they were talking about SCADA. Here's the SCADA thing right now. Looking at here, what was the question? Are there examples of actual distributed use of ML AI for SCADA or PI data for anomaly classification? Now, this was a trick question because mine is one of those, but it didn't identify mine because I don't pay an arm and a leg for advertising, right? So there are several examples of actual distributed use of machine learning and artificial intelligence for SCADA PI. They're all experimental. That was one of the things we talked about this last week. The folks got up and they said, is there things that we can do? Yes, we can take all of this massive amount of data and do the data science and pick some stuff out and give you anomaly detection. And of course, I asked the question, why are you doing anomaly detection first? Shouldn't you figure out how to classify the faults before you can do anomaly detection? Oh, no. It'll identify something and then it'll tell us you got so long. But how? How can you do that? And you notice, by the way, this one here is specific to wind turbines. Wind turbines are awesome because we've got SCADA data on everything, but we don't, we're supposed to have predictive technologies on them. A lot don't. So in any case, my work, my research, my team's research, I should say, basically went back and said, in order to get a result, we have to know what the fault is. Because unless I know it's this part of the bearing, I can't tell you how fast it's going to fail, right? Because what if it's electrical discharge versus lubrication? One's correctable, by the way. I just put in more lubrication. The other one's not reversible, but also happens far more rapidly than the other failure. So what does the anomaly detection folks do? They say, well, we have a problem with bearing. Here's a countdown timer. And we're going to, if we have access to predictive technologies, we'll give you an idea of what the slope is going to be so we can tell you when you're going to have to replace it. I was out in the field last year, and I went in and did some analysis on a piece of equipment, identified a cage and ball frequency, which generally means lubrication, and I said, put a couple of squirts of grease in. And we dropped the energy consumption of the machine by 5 kilowatts. Well, that 5 kilowatts was feeding into the bearing. That's why the bearing was running so hot, and on and on and on, right? So we were not only just able to identify the condition and say, you know what, we can mitigate this if we do something about it right away. And we're not going to extend the life of the, well, we're going to temporarily extend the life of the machine, because once I do see it and it's absorbing 5 kilowatts into a 63, I think it was a 6328 or 6330 bearing. Once I start seeing that amount of energy being lost across a bearing, I know there's damage being done. But I can make an improvement so that I can get more life out of that instead of just counting down. So I might get 2 more years out of that bearing instead of having to replace it that weekend, not identifying that I had a lubrication issue caused by something which should trigger an RCFA to figure out why we're going to have this expensive machine down and da-da-da-da, right? It could be something as simple as a 5 why, but we want to take a look at why, because we're going to put this machine back in place, and that bearing had only been there for 2 years, or 1.5 years, for about 18 months, and we're going to replace it within 2 years. How long is a bearing supposed to last? 5-10 years, right? So anyways, so as we come down here, the next question, I said, to fully define rule and its accuracy. So remaining useful life, a critical concept in the domain of predictive maintenance and reliability engineering. Not really. Rule refers to the estimated duration or time remaining before an asset or component reaches the end of its useful life. In similar terms, it's the amount of time or operational cycles left. Time to failure. Time to failure. Mean time to failure. That's all it is. That means I've detected something on my failure curve. It's a natural log. And my history tells me that it's going to take so long. So that's the number I toss out there. Not predictive maintenance. One of the derogatory statements made by one of the presenters this last week was that, it's better to use rule and machine learning because technician isn't going to worry about this stuff. They're just going to identify that it's a fault. They're going to do anomaly detection, which is the exact opposite. He said a certified vibration analyst. This is the thought process behind these programmers for these software systems as part of their marketing tool, right? He was the only marketing guy that got up there. He's technical marketing. So he gets up and he's basically lying to us that vibration technicians only go up and identify that there's a fault, but won't provide any educated information back on how long a piece of equipment's going to last. And he's telling this in order to push his concept, which, by the way, has investments, but no product. The importance of remaining useful life. Optimize maintenance schedules to prevent unexpected downtime. Plans for parts replacements or repairs in a cost-effective manner. Enhance safety by preventing potential failures. Improve resource allocations and inventory. Extend to the, basically, well, this last part they never do. These parts here all have to do with reactive maintenance. Where's the bit about using the information to engineer out the problem? To do the root cause analysis. I never hear that. Never hear it. Methods for estimating. Data-driven methods. Model-based methods. Hybrid approaches. Hybrid approaches, those can work, but that heads in the direction of time to failure estimation. Accuracy based on quality and quantity of data. Throw more crap at the wall. Some of it's going to work. Model complexity and appropriateness. The more complex it is, changing operating conditions. This is something that's interesting because the project we did had to do with variable speed fans as a majority of the equipment. Operating conditions were constantly changing. Rule didn't work, plain and simple. We did time to failure estimation. Measurement and sensor errors, which everybody forgets that has to be maintained as well. Okay, so what are the actual improvements and business impacts? Changes to P&L through digitization by company size. Of course, it varies. It gave me theoretical stuff. Improve customer P&L impact on small business. Enhanced revenue growth through new market. Then I kept asking it, what percentage? How much has it improved? Where's data showing me how much it's improved? Guess what doesn't exist? No actual measurement and verification data exists for showing me the P&L impact. What exists is anecdotal. What exists is marketing and sales. What exists is executives who got involved in this stuff turning around and saying, this stuff is a great thing since sliced bread. Oh, yeah, we got nowhere near what we expected to get out of it, but it was a good decision because we're now, we don't produce hamburgers anymore. We produce data. But if I go to get a hamburger, I don't want to eat ones and zeros. Well, I guess the new printed stuff, right? Large enterprises, P&L impact can lead to, but you notice it says can lead to. can do this, might be this, maybe this. And we're going to talk about why in just a second. A lot of the stuff, though, also came about that they had to, a lot of the companies had to look inside. I did ask it. I said, oh, here we go. What is the published general return on investment for digitization, including reported ROI by size of company, and include success and failure data by company size? Also identify lessons learned as reported by company executives related to success and failure of implementation. Separately identify consultant responses to the same, but do not mix the responses. Okay? Now, part of the reason I did this all ahead of time is because, and you can see that I've run it a few times, had to do with the fact that it was telling me stuff, and I asked it for the link, so I went and got the papers or whatever else and reviewed them. Let's just say I spent a lot of time today. What are we at? 6 o'clock right now? I started working on this at 6 a.m. today. So 12 hours to do this, what's going to turn into an hour 20. So, and sorry about that if you were expecting under an hour. This is a bigger topic, and as I said, this time here I'm showing this is the stuff that's really going on based upon the science and evidence and peer review stuff and the information we got this past week from all the work that's going on by these folks. I mean, really, wind, some of the most advanced stuff that's out there. Like I said, big data started with wind. That started through GE and wind. That was literally, I sat through the first presentation where big data was announced, and wasn't that long ago, especially for old farts like me. So, the return on investment digital varies widely amongst companies, influenced by how they leverage digital technologies, their industry, and company size. Meaning, if they threw a whole bunch at it, they got a bigger ROI, maybe. McKinsey's analysis on digital reinvention highlighted that companies experience varying levels of success with their digital investments, emphasized the importance of precisely targeting digital investments in areas where digitalization is advancing rapidly, such as product and services, marketing, supply chains, and ecosystems. Don't see reliability and maintenance in there. The uneven effects of digitalization on revenue and profit growth are attributed to mismatch between. It's always something else. It's not the fact that you don't need a digital transformation of everything. It's a buzzword. There are a lot of things. Like I said, I can reduce my time. I do a lot of research. I did this research using machine learning, but then spent the time to validate everything. It saved me 100 hours. See? That's what they tell you. Actually, chances are I would have gone on, I would have found a couple of papers through simple Google searches or on IEEE Explore, utilized that information, put this together, probably taken me a few extra hours. Now, what I did get is I got some different points of view. I got some ideas that I hadn't thought of, and I got a few other things. So there was value to doing this today. There was value from using machine learning and AI in doing just this. What's my return on investment? How many people are going to watch this? 1, 2, dozen, 2 dozen, 100? I don't know. I'll get it out there, and some people are interested in this topic, some people are not. What's the financial return on investment? Nothing. I just felt like talking. Just kidding. It's hard to tie some of these things back. And then, so here we go. Lessons learned as reported by company executives generally underline the importance of aligning digital investments with overarching business strategies. Sounds common sense, but it's, how common is common sense? focusing on customer and employee digital experiences. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I like going on and knowing that my package is going to arrive in the next hour, only to find out afterwards that the truck driver didn't ring the doorbell and just left a sticker, and I had to chase, this actually happened this week, had to chase stuff over an hour away to go get it and bring it back so that I could finish assembling something, but I couldn't assemble it because the digital information provided by the manufacturer of the system that I was looking for an instrument that we're designing neglected to identify. They gave the impression that they were providing certain components but didn't. So now I have to wait until those components arrive from a different party, which has an impact on the cost for the development, the R&D cost for the development of that equipment. Being willing to experiment and accept the risks associated with digital incentives. I don't know why that's third. That's a big issue. Managing the disruptive impact of digitalization on company operations and culture. The consultants emphasize the necessity of having a structured process and proper governance to maintain digital ROI effectively. Meaning, basically, from a consultant's perspective, you're to stop doing what you're doing to make revenue in order to follow what we're telling you and change your whole thing. So, let's take a look. Show links for this. So these were the things, right? So what they found in the McKinsey report, what they found in this report, and what they found in some of the other reports was that failure rates were high. Everything was blamed on a lack of commitment, no matter how much commitment was there. And then some of the risks. Well, what happened this last week? McDonald's had let's say a blip in their technology worldwide. Affected their business significantly. A small thing by an employee has a limited impact. A small thing, whether it's influenced by the outside, an aggressor, or it's influenced by a mistake or a procedural issue, or they hadn't fully aligned things, can impact the entire organization all at once. So, all of its alignment and consultant speak. So, what are the failure rates? So I went and I re-asked this during our little break there, and this is correct. So the other time it was telling me, oh yeah, they're 90% this and that, but they worded it carefully. Traditional industries like pharmaceuticals, oil, gas, automotive, and infrastructure have digital transformation success rates ranging from 4 to 11%. That's success. We'll take it from a positive standpoint. That means 90+% fail. 9 out of 10 fail. Smaller companies with fewer than 100 employees are more likely to report success compared to the larger ones with more than 50,000, being 2.7 times more likely to succeed. All right, we're 12%, 10% more likely. Yeah, we're 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 chances of failure in a smaller company because we're almost 3 times more likely 4% or 11%. On average, only about 30% of digital transformations meet or exceed their target value and result in long-term change, falling into what can be classified as winning transformations. The remaining 70%, now, these are the successful ones, by the way, 30 and 70 of the successful ones. I read the report. Remaining 70% either create some value without fully meeting their targets or create limited value with no substantial change. 70%. Organizations that tend to overestimate the benefits of their digital transformation efforts by more than twice, reaping less than 1/3 of the anticipated benefits. This discrepancy underscores the challenges in integrating new technologies into existing systems and processes. So in effect, while we've been promoting digital transformation everywhere, rush, 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 you must have it or you'll not survive. Reminds me of Jack Welch. You must be doing business in a certain country or you'll be out of business. Well, Significant statistic to note is that 75% of digital transformations settle for diluted value and mediocre performance. 75%, compared to 68% of conventional transformations. Okay, so basically, you have a huge chance for not getting anything at all. I mean, yes, there's a high chance for a standard transformation of something in the business having an impact, but the investments are drastically different. Lessons learned. Clear and integrated strategy with specific transformational goals. Leadership commitment across. I have yet to see a digital transformation thing that did not have leadership commitment, but they still fail. Why do they say no leadership commitment? Because the consultant needs to blame somebody. The digital transformation company or the software needs to blame somebody for the problem. High caliber talent dedicated to driving the transformation versus the reason a lot of the companies are doing digital transformation in the first place, to replace those high caliber people because they're hard to find. Agile governance and the adoption of a mindset that fosters broader organizational change. Having been through organizational change efforts, having been an executive trying to implement organizational change, yeah. Okay, you must do bigger and better in order to do this. If the culture doesn't exist, the culture is not going to exist. Effectively monitoring of progress with clear metrics and targets. Supposedly it happens. Business-led modular technology and data platforms to support transformational needs. I'm not even going to comment on that. Okay, so basically, you could change the odds of success from 30 to 80%. BCG is a consulting company for digital transformation. So if you follow those 6 items that they recommend, you'll succeed. But a lot of the companies follow those, and they're at 4 to 11%. Main challenges highlighted included resistance from employees. See, gotta blame the employees. Pilot error. Alignment between business goals and technology investments. This is true. Leadership issues and unrealistic expectations. That sounds like it's a people thing. So you've got the wrong people in place. Eliminate you were 90%, you're part of the 90%. Well, in that case, you need to go and eliminate your executives, bring in the people we recommend, and forget about customers and stuff like that. Focus on getting your customer data, because that's your real business, is selling that. Who cares what the hamburger tastes like? So, in the end, I think you picked up on some of my field observations. Being a consultant, I guess I'm being kind of a bit of a trader, right? What if I said I didn't care? Really, my concern is that we are often charging down these paths. Industry 4.0. Some of the other stuff. Seen it before. They're fads. We've followed down the concepts of the theory of constraints and ended up with a problem caused by 2020, but no foresight. We've had implementations of stuff that don't work. I'm watching people state stuff exists that just clearly doesn't exist yet. Overhyping technology. It's not just those 6 things. Those 6 things were identified by the technology companies, basically, that say they have something that doesn't work right. Just like the studies for CMMS systems before that said 94% failure rate. Exactly the same numbers. In which people rushed out there and those organizations basically said, you know, your culture and how you operate and how it's built your success, well, you need to stop doing that. You need to bring our solution in and basically be a cookie cutter of your competitor. And you're going to succeed. By the way, in your enterprise-wide CMMS, parts, whatever system. Versus what was found in some of these studies was a very direct correlation between not off-the-shelf systems, custom data science work done by internal people having a huge success. Where it comes back to our reliability and predictive maintenance stuff, I've already started showing you some of that stuff using ChatGPT as an example, right? Because everybody's doing it. If I put ChatGPT in the title, like this one, I'll get more viewers. Marketing, right? I'll get more viewers than I will if I said LLM or AI or whatever. Or, hey, common sense, folks. Yeah, I guarantee I won't have a single viewer if I say the words common sense. But neither here nor there. When we come right down to it, and I know I'm lagging like crazy, so my expressions are not matching the words. Maybe I should just make this one sound, but neither here nor there. In the end, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of positives going on. We're not there yet. In next week, in the podcast, I'm going to spend time going through where things really are. And not just from our perspective, but across the industry, and how it can be considered into your system as you make the steps towards, right? We all want to make these massive jumps because we have to impress somebody. I'm trying to figure out who those somebodies are, whether it's an investor or something like that. However, all success has come from slow, steady progress, not blowing things up. And with that, I leave you till next week.